choice, but there's no guarantee, right? Some of you are in McDonald's now, or home watching, what is tonight, American Idol, something like that, or something like that, because your mind can go in different places. So Kant did not believe psychology could be done as a science because the mind couldn't be measured. It had no spatial dimension. It couldn't be pinned down. There was an aspect of freedom where it could move all over. Can't do it. So he leaves on that. And that's where we pick up with the rest of chapter 4. Very briefly, it's about, well, let's say 2 characters, mainly, who are coming from a German background. And I have to say, psychology as we know it in class and in the West and everything, does pretty much come from Germany. That's not completely true. Other people were doing other things. But this really became the motive force for what got established in other countries and into the 20th century. So other things are going on, but this is really a powerful kind of thing. And a lot of these Germans were reading Kant. So that's why one of the reasons why Kant gets 2 stars and is kind of important, because reading him motivated people on. A lot of what they read they agreed with. Yes, it's not just experience. Experience doesn't tell you anything. You have to know what to look for before experience can count. That's what Kant's saying. The mind is not passive, like a tabula rasa. It's active. It's looking to grab things by way of apperception. They all believe that. But what they had problems with, they believed it so much, I guess you might say they even believed it more than Kant, because they believed that you could actually see it in how the body works. And this explains why psychology has this special relationship with physiology, because that was where you could see Kant's ideas. I always kind of like that, because Kant is so highfalutin and abstract. And then it's like, where do you get some proof of this? In how your eye works, and how your skin works, and how your body functions. Not in any abstract world. We're not talking about egos and ids. We're talking about the eye, seeing the world around it. The first name to remember is Johannes Müller. 2 little umlauts over the U. I think I spelled it wrong, but the umlauts are right. He was one of the first physiologists. He was really a main character in studying the nervous system. And the thing that he was really caught up on was Kant. He was reading Kant. But with regard to the body, what he noticed were specific nerve energies. What he was on the brink of discovering was that the way we respond to the world around us is not by just picking it up and gobbling up experience, but rather our sensory organs, our eyes, our nose, our ear, our skin, our sense of balance, determine how we pick up the world around us. It's not like the world is jumping into our face. It's our face is going out, picking up what it can pick up on. And specific nervous energies is referring to the fact that, for example, the eye has a retina, which is the ends of the ends of neurons that pick up certain kinds of light, okay? And if you don't have the right kind of light out there, you're not going to see it, right? Like ultraviolet light, or if the sound isn't at the right level, we're not going to hear it, like with the dog whistles and those kinds of things as well. So he was right on the brink of thinking all of that. He was really into kind of looking for Kant's ideas in the body, except he had this idea that to actually measure the nerve energy, it was too quick. You couldn't do that. How are you going to measure it? Maybe that's what Kant was talking about when he said you can't measure it. How are you going to get that? And he was called, or what he believed in, was known as vitalism. That's a nice little tidbit of information. You just kind of throw in a test and separate the B's from the B minuses. Vitalism, which is basically the belief that when it comes to literally measuring nerve energies, you can't do it. They're too quick. They're possibly not even material. That's kind of where Müller drew the line. Well, along come his students, and usually very often good students are students who cause trouble. And the one who came along and responded to Müller is Helmholtz. And Helmholtz really went off and made a big name for himself, even bigger than Müller's. Basically, believing in a lot of Kant's ideas, trying to find it in the studies of the body, and he found a lot of it. But along the way, one of the things that made him famous was he did away with Mueller's vitalism and endorsed what we now refer to as a mechanistic view of how the body works and how the mind works, eventually. He starts it here. He demonstrated, and this is important about Helmholtz, he demonstrated that you can measure a nerve impulse. He did that with a frog's leg, and he attached an electrode at one point on the thigh, and he had an attachment down by the ankle, and he measured the time that it took between the stimulation of the thigh and the twitch of the ankle. Then he moved the stimulation from the thigh to lower on the leg, and he measured the time that it took again. And then by subtracting the larger number from the smaller number, he can get an estimate of how quickly the energy is traveling through the nerve. And our book talks a little bit about that. It turns out that for our different sensory systems, eye, ear, touch, there's different speeds, and people have modified it since his day, and it turns out there's a lot of individual difference among humans in particular. But by and large, he did it, and it's still there today for us to know, so we can get measurements on nervous activity. The other thing he did was he was also interested in this whole idea of the conservation of energy. That energy just doesn't come from nowhere and then disappear. That throughout the world and throughout our experiences, what we're dealing with is the transformation of energy, like taking a piece of wood and burning it, which then produces heat, which then can affect water, which produces steam. Helmholtz is looking at all of this, saying that's not different experiences. That's basically one energy form that's just changing how it manifests itself. Now, that had been talked about in physics before, but Helmholtz thought it was just as true in the body. And later on, Freud is going to say that's what happens with the personality. You know, so if you're sitting out there and you're angry and you're really kind of nasty, but you're holding it all in, some people would say, good, shut your mouth, I don't want to hear you. That's what I would say. But Freud would say that energy, that anger is going to come out somewhere else. It doesn't go away. It transforms. You're going to either go home and kick your cat, God forbid, don't do that, right? Or you'll get an ulcer, right? Or you'll get a brain tumor, or you'll go and pick a fight with somebody who doesn't know why you're angry. But the energy doesn't go away. It conserves itself, just it changes its form. So there you have Helmholtz talking about some interesting ideas. Doesn't sound so interesting back then, but it will be very important to what's going to happen in psychology in the future. The other thing that he talked a lot about, and you should know about, is perception. And there's a few things there. First, when he talks about perception, he makes an important division. He doesn't just talk about perception. He talks about sensation and perception, just like Kant. The sensory, and then what you perceive is more intellectual. Among the sensory system, you get a lot of information, and just like Kant would say, the information you pick up with your sensory system is always incomplete, always fragmented. You're moving around. You're never getting the full picture. You think the whole thing is happening, but you're getting bits and pieces, and that's what you're working with. So the sensory system picks up bits and pieces of information, and it adapts to the situation. It changes. The best example of that is when you jump into water and it's cold, and then a little while later it doesn't feel so cold anymore. The water didn't necessarily change, but your sensory system changed as a result of that. So the sensory system is there. They talk a little bit about the eye, and most importantly, they talk about how the physics of the eye, or the physiology of the eye, is very much like a camera. It has an opening in the pupil, it has a lens, and most importantly, it's the transformation of light energy from the environment into the eye that allows us to see. Remember, because I know some of these questions already, that in fact the most important part of the eye for picking up the energy and transforming it is the retina on the back of the eye. And the retina is very limited. It's only two-dimensional. It's very small. And the question is, how do we see the world the way we see it? We've only got this little camera, two little cameras in our heads. What's going on, right? Well, there, Helmholtz says, the energy goes in through the eye, it then goes into the brain and is